Hey everyone, welcome to the second episode of Dave's WrestleCast. Well, we're going to talk about AEW's Revolution, we're going to talk about Sting's final match, what's next for the AEW Tag Team titles, and also talk about the WWE Hall of Fame, since the very first inductees have been announced, so it's going to be interesting to see who else gets inducted. So far, Paul Heyman is being inducted. I had a thought that they would do the ECW thing, but I thought maybe we could have seen Raven and Tommy Dreamer being inducted in the Hall of Fame as two guys that were synonymous with ECW back in the day. I have zero problems with Paul Heyman being inducted in the Hall of Fame in Philly because he was ECW. He kept ECW going. He made ECW what it was, and he does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame for his managerial stuff before ECW when he was working with WCW and being part of the Dangerous Alliance and stuff like that. So I think that Heyman is a great induction, but I would still like to see Raven and Tommy Dreamer also given the accolades they deserve as well in the Hall of Fame, even though I don't think it's ever going to happen. But you never know in this business. They say never say never in the WWE. I mean, we never thought we'd see the Ultimate Warrior come back, and he came back, even though sadly he passed away just after his return and stuff. But still, they say never say never. So that's going to be interesting to see how it goes in the future. But also in the Hall of Fame is the US Express, Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham. Two great athletes and two great wrestlers. I have no objections with them being in the Hall of Fame. I'm not too sure that the US Express is a Hall of Fame tag team. I know that as singles competitors, they're both Hall of Fame worthy because they were both great singles competitors and they have done so much in the WWE and WCW and pro wrestling in general. But I don't really know if they're a Hall of Fame tag team, but hey, the WWE has decided this, and good on them. So yeah, it's something good. Also, Bull Nakano is being inducted in the Hall of Fame. One of the great women's wrestlers, one wrestler I really loved watching over the years in WWE, WCW, and also I've seen some of her stuff in Japan as well. So she's a very big influence in my love of women's wrestling, so it's great to see her inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame as well. I hope to see some more of the great women's wrestlers inducted in the Hall of Fame because there's been so many great ones over the years, and I've loved watching women's wrestling over the years as well, so it's great to see. I'm also very curious to see if they actually are going to induct Bray Wyatt into the Hall of Fame, since sadly he passed away, and there have been rumours that they're going to induct him in the Hall of Fame this year, so it will be an interesting one just to see who for WrestleMania weekend. So it will be interesting. I know that Lex Luger has been trying to put his name forward as a Hall of Fame inductee. So who knows? Maybe Lex will get a nod because he'd have a Hall of Fame career in WCW. He won a few titles there and did great work there. He was also NWA champion when WCW was the NWA as well. But didn't really have much of a Hall of Fame career in the WWE. I mean, he did win the Royal Rumble with Bret Hart in '94, and he was meant to go on to win the WWE, then WWF title against Yokozuna, but apparently the night before he decided to blab about the finish of the match and told everyone that he was going to win the title, and then supposedly WWE changed their idea to give it to Bret Hart at the WrestleMania 10 pay-per-view, so it was just a bit of a sad one for Lex Luger, but I think that he's done well to be a champion in WCW. He's been a world champion twice. He was television champion twice. He was the NWA, WCW United States champion 5 times. NWA Mid-Atlantic and WCW Tag Team champion 3 times. He was also the second Triple Crown winner in WCW, so he's done a whole lot there, and he also had Feud of the Year in 1987 with the Horsemen and the Superpowers with the Road Warriors. So he's done a whole lot in WCW. He was also Rookie of the Year in 1986, Wrestler of the Year in 1997. So he's had a Hall of Fame career that I think that he deserves to one day step foot into the WWE Hall of Fame, even though he didn't do the Hall of Fame career in WWE. He did do it in WCW, and there have been inductees that haven't actually rose to the fame in WWE that have been in the Hall of Fame, such as Muta, who did a lot of stuff in Japan and WCW. So it's going to be interesting to see if Lex Luger does get that nod. I do believe he deserves it, and I hope that Sting is the one that inducts him in the Hall of Fame, since him and Sting were tag team partners and they were best friends in the WCW, and they're still friends today. So that would be interesting to see. And also, Lex Luger was actually at AEW Revolution. He was in a photo backstage with Sting. He wasn't allowed to be on screen apparently because of his WWE Legends contract, supposedly. Anyway, who knows if it's true or not. It was good to see Lex Luger backstage, even though he wasn't on screen, just to be there as part of Sting's final match in the wrestling business. Sting's career has spanned 40 years. It's been a great career over that 40 years. He's been in WCW, WWE, TNA, and now All Elite Wrestling. So he's been everywhere and anywhere, and he's done a whole lot in the whole time he's been in the pro wrestling business. And it was just great to see him go out with a great match, and he even went out with a win. You know, it was something that you never really see sometimes, you know, a wrestler going out with a win. So it was a good way to say goodbye, and hopefully, you know, we see something good happen with Darby Allin. You know, we got to see Sting's sons dressed as different versions of Sting at the pay-per-view. So it was just a great way just to end Sting's career at a massive event, and there was a whole heap of people there. There was like 16,000 people that crammed into the Greensboro Coliseum, and they were just treated to a great pay-per-view of matches. The match of the night has to have been Takeshita versus Will Ospreay. That was just an amazing match, and they both just beat the hell out of each other. Even though they're stablemates, they still just went to town on each other, and there was a scary moment when Takeshita actually missed a move that was meant to be hitting Will Ospreay's back on the top rope, but he ended up missing that and going straight down. And yeah, it was just a little bit of a scary moment, but it ended up turning out very well, and it was a great match. I think that the tag team match between the Blackpool Combat Club, John Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli, and FTR, Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler was a pretty good match. It was a very interesting time for that match. Also, I really liked the women's title match, Toni Storm beating Deonna Purrazzo. It was interesting just to see Mariah May come out as Toni Storm and make everyone think that Toni Storm had reverted back to her previous look. But yeah, it was just an interesting match, and you know, it was a very short match, but it still wasn't too bad. It was good to see some women wrestling on the show. It would have been good to have the match go a little bit longer and have a little bit more action, but it is what it is, you know. But the triple threat match, Samoa Joe beating Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland, was pretty good. I'm pretty sure that eventually Swerve Strickland is going to be AEW World Champion. It's going to happen because I know that he's very well liked by the fans. He's putting on some great matches. He's also looking very good in the ring, and he's turned face recently, so he's got the fans on his side. And I think that he might actually maybe challenge Wardlow, who won that All-Star Scramble match, for the winner who gets the future AEW World title shot. I mean, you got to wait for a while to see if that actually eventuates. I know that they've been trying to push Wardlow as a heel monster, so it'll be interesting to see how they push him forward and see if they put him in the title picture very soon. I know that he will be in the title picture one way or the other, sooner rather than later. I think it'll probably be by the end of the year, even though it might be start of next year, who knows. But I know that Swerve Strickland and Wardlow will probably be champions at some point in the next few months. It depends on how long they decide to keep Samoa Joe as champion. And also maybe when Hangman Page comes back, he'll probably challenge again. But I also think that it's going to be interesting to see what they do with MJF, since he's meant to be coming back soon. They've got the next pay-per-view being AEW Dynasty, and it's been touted that MJF is going to return at that pay-per-view, so it's just going to be interesting to see what AEW does going forward. I think that AEW puts on some great shows. I think they've done very well with how they put on AEW Revolution. It was a great pay-per-view, some great matches. It'll be interesting just to see if they can top the pay-per-view and do some great stuff going forward with the pay-per-view, because I think that they've really struggled with the storylines going forward. They've put on some great matches. It's a bit like TNA in a way. TNA had some great matches, had some great shows, but they had some very terrible storylines, and I think that maybe AEW is falling into that little bit. So hopefully AEW can figure something out and just get themselves to where they should be, and putting on some great shows, putting on some great storylines, and actually get the ratings up, because I think that AEW is a good product. They're a good company, but they just need to stop focusing on WWE so much and focus on making their own storylines, their own bookings, and hopefully making their shows pretty good. That I've been very critical of Tony Khan. I've posted articles on pwdownunder.com about how I think that Tony Khan needs to stop focusing on the WWE and start focusing on AEW and focusing on his bookings, his ideas, and making things better instead of focusing on the negatives that WWE do and stuff. But hey, I think that he's just a wrestling fan that wants to have his opinion, but I do think he needs to stay off X, formerly known as Twitter, because he's just very cringe when he's on there just ranting about silly stuff that nobody even cares about and no one should really be focusing on. And it's just taking the focus away from what a great product he has there, because he's busy bitching and moaning and carrying on about what WWE does wrong and what negatives there are in pro wrestling. And I guess that's something that most of the pro wrestling community does, is focus on the negatives. I know I've focused on some negatives here on my podcast, and I've actually said some negatives about Tony Khan here, but I think it's been really valid just to talk about Tony Khan's negativity and his focus shifting from AEW to other aspects. I know that all the fans on X managed to tell Tony Khan off about it and stuff, but I think that he needs just to take a step back, and also take a step back from being on TV and actually maybe get a figurehead, authority figure on the program, so then they're actually on there talking about stuff instead of Tony Khan, so we don't see Tony Khan every time making an announcement. We can see the supposed figurehead, authority figure on the program doing it. And so if they've got a whole lot of people that could do that backstage, they could just do an angle like WWE used to do and keep the McMahons off TV, because we don't want to see the McMahons all the time. We don't want to see Tony Khan all the time. We want to just focus on the wrestling. And I know that Tony Khan owns the company and he's putting the money in there, but I think that he should just be a silent person in the background and let AEW just go forward without having his face on the TV as well. Just find someone else to do that sort of angle and stuff for AEW. Right, let's move on from that topic. I'm actually very interested to see how AEW handles Mercedes Moné, formerly known as Sasha Banks, in AEW when she signs. Apparently she's already signed, and she's apparently going to make her debut at AEW's Big Business event. It'll be interesting just to see how they book her, since the handling of the women's division hasn't been the best since their inception. I know they've tried to push a few here and there, but they've never actually really gotten a foothold. I know they've signed some decent talent. They've got some great women wrestlers on their roster, but it just seems that AEW has just been dropping the ball on the women's division. TNA has done a great job with their women, and since the women's revolution in WWE, they've done a great job as well. So it's now time for AEW just to start looking at booking their women in a vastly different way, just so then they've now got a decent women's division, since they have signed a whole heap of women's talent. They've got Diana Perezzo in now, so that's going to be interesting to see how she goes. There's been talk about maybe Jordynne Grace going to AEW or the WWE, since there have been some issues with TNA after the firing of Scott D'Amore. A lot of talent have put up an hourglass, so that's made people think that maybe these people are on their way out of TNA. And it's going to be interesting to see how TNA goes after the whole Scott D'Amore fiasco and him firing. It's just going to be interesting to see how the talent goes, and if the TNA is going to keep hold of the talent that as opposed to looking to leave, or if they're just going to make some changes again, since TNA has a bit of a revolving door going on with their talent. They seem to lose talent here and there after booking them very well, so it's just going to be interesting to see how TNA goes after this whole Scott D'Amore thing. And, if Jordynne Grace does end up leaving after her contract expires, I think she's still got about a year left on her contract with TNA, so there's still some time left for Jordynne Grace to do some good things in TNA, but then what happens next. Purrazzo and Taya Valkyrie were both in TNA, but now they're in AEW, so it's going to be a very interesting few months for TNA. I know they've got Nick Nemeth, formerly known as Dolph Ziggler, there doing some good things, and they've put on some good shows, and they've got some interesting storylines going, but it's just going to be interesting to see how TNA has decided to turn the corner over the last few years, and in part that's thanks to Scott D'Amore and his work as president of TNA. He's done some great job, and he was actually considering buying TNA. There was actually apparently an offer on the table to purchase the company from Anthem, so it's just going to be an interesting few months, I think, and hopefully TNA can keep with their momentum. They've put on some great shows, they've had some great talent come in that company. They just need to start trying to hopefully keep the talent in the company and not losing it, because they've got so many people that are now former TNA stars in other companies, and it's just going to be interesting to see how this whole company can bounce back after the whole Scott D'Amore fiasco, I think. So that's going to be interesting to see how it goes, and it'll be interesting to see how AEW's women division does go. I did like how Mariah May came out as a former version of Toni Storm, making people think that maybe Toni Storm has reverted back to the old Toni Storm and she's going to be vastly different. But we had timeless Toni Storm come out from the back, and everyone was just shocked and confused as to what was going on. And then the commentator said it was Mariah May and acted like they knew from the get-go, which they didn't. So it was just a very interesting one, and it was very well done. You know, she actually looked like a former version of Toni Storm, so it was a fun little thing that they did at AEW Revolution, and I'm actually liking the toneless Toni Storm character. She's been very interesting, and it's very unique, and I'm interested to see how the former Dana Brooks, who is now Ash by Elegance, goes, as people have been comparing the two characters and saying that she's ripped off Toni Storm, even though she hasn't said a word yet as her new character. So it's just going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds with both characters. I think it's going to be some interesting wrestling coming up for the next few months. Mercedes Moné will be the face of the company, I reckon, you know, as the women's division. She'll likely take over the title, and I'll be interested to see how she goes in her new role in AEW, and be interested to see how they book her and all the feuds that AEW will do with that, and if the AEW women's division will actually be vastly different and actually even better than it has been. Just now that they've got some good women's wrestlers, and it looks like they're slowly, and I just say slowly, getting the women's division, giving them some more TV time and some more angles and some more storylines. So it's just going to be interesting to see if they can get this whole division off and running and actually get people to actually focus on it, because they've got the talent. They've just had some very bad booking in the women's division, I feel, aside from how they've got Toni Storm at the moment. And I think that Thunder Rosa has come back very strong, and she's been looking very good, so that's another one to add to it. And then you'll have Britt Baker come back when she's ready to come back, so that's a few names to add to the AEW women's roster, and they'll probably look out for a few more. Hopefully they don't go after Eva Marie, since there was rumours about her joining AEW's roster. I'm not a big fan of Eva Marie, never have been, never will be. I know that some people like her and that, and she's, you know, a beautiful woman. You know, she's probably got some talent as a Valley or something, but as an in-ring performer, I think that it's just not going to work for AEW, and it's not going to work for me either. But I guess it doesn't really matter what I think and how I feel and stuff, but I really think that AEW could do way better than getting Eva Marie in the company, and it would just be a waste of a signing, and hopefully they'll stay well clear of that signing, and hopefully we won't see Eva Marie on either AEW, WWE, or even TNA, because I think that she's just not it for the business, and it would be good for her to stay the heck away from the wrestling business. So here's hoping that Eva Marie doesn't come back, but someone's probably going to sign her for some reason. You know, they'll probably think that she's got some popularity or something, but I'm not a big fan. As you can tell in my voice, and it's probably unfair that I'm a bit anti-Eva Marie, but I've seen her work matches and I've seen her stuff in WWE, and I'm just like, no, it's not me. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. Maybe leave some comments, your thoughts on Eva Marie, you know, in the comment section of Substack. Maybe even send me a message on Facebook, on my Facebook page, and tell me what you think of anything that I've spoken about today, Eva Marie, AEW's Women Division, Revolution, the Hall of Fame, and anything else. So it would be good to discuss this on the podcast. It'll give me some more topics, and I always enjoy having a bit of a talk about anything pro wrestling, and just getting in there with my opinions, and also hearing other people's opinions, because that's what we like to do with this podcast, is to give opinions and actually take opinions and then just discuss it and see how we go with all that. So it would be good just to have a bit of a discussion and see what opinions are out there, and it'd be good to have a bit of fun with it. I like to mix it up with my podcast. As you've seen with Joel and I with the It's a Dave thing, we've been having some messing around and we've had some fun. So I like to add some more fun to the wrestling podcast and have a bit of fun, and just be random and have a lot of fun, and just discuss the world of professional wrestling, which is something I've been watching since I was a kid. I can go into hours and hours of how many matches I've seen and all my favorite wrestlers over the years, and all that sort of topic. But I don't want to bore people with some stories that are probably going to be a little bit like, yeah, see, that's me snoring because I'm actually boring myself. So, there's that. But, I'm just a bit of a random person. But let's go on to the last topic before we end this podcast. We've been going for about 20 minutes, so we don't want to have it go too long because I don't want to make you fall asleep. So let's just talk about Ollie Anderson and Mike Virgil Jones passing away. Really sad that both have passed away. Ollie Anderson was a legend of WCW. He's part of the famed Four Horsemen, and he's done a whole lot there. And him and Arn Anderson tagged as well, so they've been pretty good. Virgil was over in WWE as Virgil. He was very popular back in the early 90s. But he never really made it to the heights that some might have thought. He went to WCW as Vincent, a bit of a rip on Vince McMahon, since WCW was in the middle of having their war with WWE, and he joined the NWO as Vincent, because Vince McMahon's name is Vincent, so yeah, there's that. And then from there he sort of faded into obscurity, and he did some stuff with his merchandise tables and stuff at pop-up events and stuff, so it's really sad that both guys have passed away, but even more so for Virgil, who still was very young in life and had a full life, and sadly he succumbed to illness. So rest in peace, both Ollie Anderson and Virgil, and condolences to their families and friends, and to the fans of them as well, those that were fans of those two. So we're almost out of time here on Dave's WrestleCast, but let's just talk about Dark Side of the Ring just briefly. It had its first episode of the new series discussing the life of Fred Ottman. And for people who don't know who Fred Ottman was, he used to be Tugboat, Typhoon, and the infamous Shockmaster, which, if everyone's seen the memes, know that poor Fred Ottman fell over as his debut, and it became a running meme and a gag, and everyone's just been taking the mickey out of it. And it's been interesting to see all the memes and stuff ever since that incident happened back in the early 90s. And I don't think Fred Ottman really recovered from that as his character. They did try and put another mask on him and have him come back as Super Shockmaster, but damage was done. There was no way they were going to recover that. And they tried with the mask, as I said, and they gave him a different voice, and they gave him a different attire and different music, and hoped that this would sway the fans into actually caring about this gimmick. But it just flopped even more, and then Fred Ottman left WCW, and I think he went back to WWE maybe, and then went into the indies and stuff, and then just vanished for a few years, and now he's back with Dark Side of the Ring. So check out that. It's on Vice, so that's going to be interesting. I'm interested to see how the Buff Bagwell episode goes, since there was a story about him pulling a gun on his father, which is going to be interesting to hear, and it's just going to be very interesting to see some of the episodes. I actually thought that maybe down the track they could do a whole series on Vince McMahon, since all the allegations against him have numbered about 67 pages, thereabouts. So it's just going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. I was just thinking that maybe Vince is going to be looking through the pages and be like, you missed that one out, you missed this one out, and you missed this one out. So I've got more, so I'm a bit disappointed that you only had 67 pages. You could have gone to 69 pages, could have gone to 70 pages, could have gone to 100 pages with all the stuff that I've actually done, but Nope, you missed it all out. So yeah. Well, I guess we shouldn't take the Mickey out of the whole allegations because it's very serious, and it's just sad that this is how Vince McMahon's legacy is going to come to an end. With all these allegations and all this stuff that he's done. But I guess watching him on TV and stuff over the years, we should have realized that Vince McMahon was a bit of a sick puppy, and it's just sad. It's going to just tarnish the legacy of Vince McMahon. I mean, the guy that gave us so much entertainment with the WWE and stuff, and now he's just a bit of a sick puppy with a lot of stuff going, apparently. Well, that's allegedly. So, it's all alleged, so we don't know if it's actually true or not, but it's just not looking good for Vince McMahon now with those allegations. So, and I'm not going to go through them. I don't think that we need to rehash any of those. I don't think that anyone needs to hear about them all again. So, I'll just leave the smart-ass remarks, and hopefully, at the end, we get the truth, and everyone that's involved can move on and have a happy life, and it can just be ignored and forgotten about. But it's interesting to see Brock Lesnar actually has been added to the WWE roster page after he was removed for a few weeks there, and seemed to have been whitewashed from the company and that. So maybe that they're going to maybe bring back Brock Lesnar. I don't know if they're going to, but it's just interesting that his profile returned to the website after it was deleted fully, and he was actually added into the new WWE video game, W2K24, and but you got to unlock him, I think, in Showcase. I don't know if he's a character or not, but it's just something that's there. So yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see how all this allegation stuff goes, and how everyone handles it, and how all the stuff goes, and if it's going to affect pro wrestling, like the whole Chris Benoit stuff they did back in the 2000s. That was just a massive black eye for wrestling at the time. So yeah, it's just going to be some interesting times coming up. But that's all we've got time for on Dave's WrestleCast. Hopefully you've enjoyed your time with us for the last half an hour or so. Hopefully we've covered some interesting topics. If you want to discuss anything, just leave a comment on my Facebook page. It's a Dave Thing blog and podcast on Facebook. Or you can leave a comment on my Substack site where I'm going to upload my podcast. You can leave your feedback. You can give me some ideas on stuff to talk about. You can give me ideas of any subjects, or even some segments and stuff. Maybe I can do a bit on all the crappy gimmicks in pro wrestling, and go view WrestleCrap.com and go through that and just talk about some of the very shocking gimmicks that have happened in pro wrestling. So just anything and everything pro wrestling. So if you've got any ideas, just let me know and I can talk about them on the podcast. I'm hoping to have some guests on in the future. I'm hoping to team up with TCW, which is Tasmanian Championship Wrestling, and have some of them guys come on and talk about local wrestling. Hopefully I'll get some other from the podcast and we'll talk about all things pro wrestling, and maybe I'll get them on It's a Dave Thing as well and talk about all things random and nostalgia. Maybe we can even do a nostalgic trip down the memory lane with wrestling as well, because there's a whole lot of great things that happened in wrestling during the 90s as well, so that could be something to talk about in the future. So I've got ideas, and hopefully you've got some ideas, and if you want to send them to me and I can discuss them on the podcast and we can have some fun with it. But until then, thank you for listening to Dave's WrestleCast. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon on the podcast. So thank you very much. Bye.